Connor, welcome to the show.
Hey, Gavin, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm going to run our fancy little logo and then we'll get started.
Sweet.
All right. Today we're talking about your short film, Once Upon a Time in Ireland, which when I hit play on this and I went, oh boy, the 20s on a short film budget, how is this going to go? Because this instantly is ambitious, but I think you found the perfect way to tell a small chapter of an epic story and keep it contained so that it wouldn't have any of the sort of budget see-throughs as you might have if you had tried to film it in the middle of a city square or something. Where did the idea, what sort of inspired this production? How did this project come to be?
It was inspired by, I suppose, a few different things. I suppose, first of all, I should say it's a 77-minute feature movie. So it was inspired by the Irish Civil War, which happened after the War of Independence. So the War of Independence was when Ireland was at war with England to get independence. And then they finally won independence in 1916, really, I suppose, or 1922. 1916 was the Easter Rising, and then 1922 was the Civil War, where there were people who were pro the treaty. There was a treaty drawn up between England and Ireland to make a Republic of Ireland. So there were people who were pro that treaty, and they were kind of backed by the English government. And there were people who were anti the treaty, so the pro-treatyists and anti-treatyists. And the anti-treaty people would be, I suppose, they're called Republicans internationally. And the kind of the military side of them would have been the IRA, the Irish Republican Army. So I wanted to do something on that because the centenary of Irish independence and of the formation of the Free State, the Republic of Ireland, is 100 years this year. So I looked around and I researched and I spoke with people, and I heard various stories. I called up to a local, the military wing, I suppose, or the armed wing of the anti-treaty people was the Irish Republican Army, like I said. And then the political wing are a political party called Sinn Féin. So I called up to the local Sinn Féin offices in Cork, back in Ireland, and I asked them for stories that would be achievable for me to make a movie on a low budget. I shot it for under 100 grand. So there was a guy up there called Mick Nugent. He's a Sinn Féin councillor. And he told me a number of stories, but one of the stories he told me was about the Clash-Mealcon caves in Kerry. And it was about a group of men who were under siege in this cave, a tidal cave in Kerry. So I thought I could achieve that. And then that was as far as I went with the actual real story. And then the characters were all inspired by old men who I would have met as a child. My grandfather was a member of the old IRA. So I would have met my grandfather, obviously, many times. And a lot of his friends back who would have been fighting in the Civil War and the War of Independence. So a lot of the characters then are based on those guys. And I suppose things as well, like there's little things that because of, I suppose, everyone's family history in Ireland, everyone would have some connection, some family connection to both the War of Independence and the Civil War. And I'm nothing special in that way. I'm the same as everyone else. We're all the same in Ireland. I did things like the wind that you hear kind of throughout the movie.
Yes.
and the waves that you hear throughout the movie. A granduncle of mine he's buried in Normandy for when they were fighting in the World War. So he's buried over there. So I got onto a guy over in France, and I got him to record wind and waves and that kind of thing. And that's where those sounds come from. So I suppose a lot of it is very kind of it's personal to me. And yeah, that's where it came from.
I like that extra mile. I'll start by saying apologies for saying short instead of feature, because it makes the feat even more impressive that you're able to tell this epic story in a a 70+ minute film. I'm glad that you mentioned that sound design, because I found that really compelling, that you're always reminded of the environment that you're in, but there's also just this sort of like melodic, hypnotic sort of forebodingness that comes out of those wind sounds when they're in the cave and from the crashing water. And again, it's that magic of independent cinema, where often if your sound design is well done and you keep the environment moving in that sense from the audio perspective, you add so much of a layer to your indie film that the people can be immersed and forget that maybe they are sticking to a couple locations the whole time. How did you, what was the process of casting this film? The cast is phenomenal. Everybody does such a good job in this film. Are these actors you had worked with previously, or was this just an open casting call and you found the best of the best from there?
So going into it, Gavin, going into the movie, I agree with you. I think the cast are incredible. I love them all dearly still. So going into it, after I'd written it, the Conor Dwan, who plays Spider, I had worked with him before. I love him as an actor. I think he's absolutely fantastic. So I phoned him and I was going to say begged him, but he's mad to create, so it didn't take much. And then I'd worked with Emmett Kelly before. He plays the Bee. And the Bee is supposed to be this big kind of imposing man. Emmett Kelly in real life he's a kind of a skinny, handsome looking fella. So he put on like 2 or 3 stone or 4 stone. So in American speak, there's 14 pounds in a stone. So yeah. 16, so 46 pounds he put on for me. So about 50 pounds.
That's like De Niro level of like Raging Bull. Yeah,
love him. I absolutely love him, Emmett Kelly. So I knew I wanted those two. I knew I was going to act in it myself, so that if I needed any pickups or anything like that, that I could just go and do it myself. And I did that. I went down to the cave myself afterwards, just me by myself, and set up the camera and put it on sharp and sat in front of it and delivered lines. But there was no one else there.
Had you been an actor previously, or that was just part of the plan for this film?
I've acted and stuff before. I've directed, I don't know, about 50 TV commercials. I've now directed 3 features, short movies. I've worked as a second assistant director, a production manager. I've directed photography for various things. I've done locations work. I've done a good bit, kind of this and that, kind of around. The reason being, when I started making movies in 1998, I kind of decided that nobody was ever going to give me $1 billion. So $1 billion, like, so I decided I'd go out to try and learn how to do as many different things as I could. So I went out to learn everything, and then 20 odd years later, I realized I still know nothing, but I can try, So the rest of the cast, the other 4, I did casting auditions for them. I knew I wanted Conor. I knew I wanted Emmett. I knew I was going to use myself. And with the rest, it was pretty. A lot of people came in to audition, but I remember Lorcan O'Neill, when he came in. He's one of the 3 brothers, the guy who's always crying, as he says himself.
Mm-hmm.
But man, he came in and he kicked off his shoes and he put his feet up on the chair. And he was saying that what he had never acted in a movie before, but you know, you kind of look for this kind of energy, and you kind of look for you're kind of looking for nice people and creative people. And he told me that he was a ballet dancer, and he had danced in Berlin and I think New York, and he was just he had this amazing movement, and you'd see it if you're watching it only from the Lorcan perspective. You can kind of see throughout the movie that I cut an awful lot on Lorcan, on his movements, because he does the exact same thing at the exact same time every single time, and that's from being a dancer. So I love Lorcan's movement, and I love just how I love his presence on camera. I love that he's so invested in the art. Then there's Coleman Hayes. He's Ogie Murphy, another one of the brothers. Coleman he's a stand-up comedian, is what Coleman does in life. Again, he hadn't been in a movie before, but I just got this lovely energy from him again, and this kind of, he really wanted to create. Then I'm looking at the time here ticking, so I want to. Then there's Aaron Blake, who's Mick, and he's Ogie, the youngest brother's buddy. He's the lead singer / guitarist in a punk rock band, is what Aaron does in real life. And then the dog Murphy, who's dying all the time from the start, he gets shot.
Yep.
He's a writer, actor, director locally in Cork. So that was the guys in the cave, and I shot them. I shot it in 5-6 hour days, because the water was going to kill us in real life if we stayed in there for longer than that. So on the last day, actually, we were kind of caught for time, and we did have to run out through the water rather than get killed, because that'd be no fun. And then I was kind of busy then. I got the sound rushes back, and I couldn't use them. So all of the sound was ADR'd. So all the cast came back down, and they did an ADR session each. And there was a guy called David O'Sullivan, who Scully. He used to play with a band called Matisse. One of their songs was picked up by Madonna, Boom Boom Ba. So again, very, very kind of creative people again. So he built all the sound up for me from the ground up. And then there was a guy called Rob Wedgbury in Atlantic Sound. Rob is massively creative as well, and he mastered the sound, and he put in the fiddle. David O'Sullivan, the Matisse guy, he was the guy who composed the track. He composed, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 tracks, and that was the one that I chose to put into the movie. Where was I? Oh yeah. Then I shot it in 5-6 hour days. Then I went down by myself. That's all I could afford to do.
Yeah.
I went back down by myself and shot inserts and cutaways and storms and all the waves you see, and I shot myself and all that kind of stuff. And then I was away. There was just loads of other jobs on, other people's jobs. So you kind of go away and you do that, and then you come back and you're trying to do a bit of an edit, and then you're gone. And so about, I think it was 3 or 4 years after shooting Looking One Way into the cave and all the lads shooting, that I came back 3 or 4 years later and shot The Other Way.
Oh, wow.
With the attacking guys. And I cut them together. Of course, at this stage, I had put on myself in real life like about 3 or 4 stone. So my costume didn't fit me anymore. I've lost it again. But, you know, it's all that kind of fun. And the guy who plays the bad guy then, the guy who plays O'Flynn, is that composer guy who I'm talking about. The guy who composed the music and built all the sound up for me. Yeah, that was that, you know.
I'm nodding my head so much because I'm in the middle of a film right now. I've been shooting on and off for the last 3 years, so I understand it very well. Some of that's pandemic related, some of that's just I wrote a new scene, and I also act in that film, so I'm really being like, yep, I understand all of this. What I like, is it and you know, we do expect people to watch these interviews after they've watched the movie. Is it a tip of the hat to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with the choice of how you end the film?
No.
No.
But you're not the first person to say to me that my style is very Western movie style, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Um, I I didn't know that, you know. It's kind of, but then you kind of look back at my other work and I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I do that kind of thing. Um, I suppose like with like in real life in the caves,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what happened? All but one of them were killed. In obviously in the movie, it's slightly different to that.
Yep.
But things like looking back on it, when people say that to me, that it looks like a Western movie, things like the guys lined up on the cliff, that was just how I was seeing it in my mind. Again, with it being an indie movie, I couldn't afford to hire a big green screen studio, or and
Sure.
there was no
Yep.
way I was going to get like 15 or 20 lads to stand on top of the edge of a cliff at the edge of the Atlantic to fall into the water. So what we did was, it was the DP for the second part of it, looking that way. Uh, what he did was he put them on top of a rock, and we had a clear blue sky. So he shot them from a low angle, and so the blue sky was like the blue screen. And
Mm-hmm.
then I then learned on YouTube, through YouTube tutorials, how to take them out of that and place them on the cliff.
Oh
Uh,
wow. That's
including
incredible. What a cheap that's the cheapest blue screen I've ever heard of, just using a clear sky.
Yeah, and I've used it. I've used it since. I've used it since then. You
I'm
know,
gonna that's being stored in my brain immediately.
and
You
it's
know, so you have all these lessons. Had to go with unusable sound and redo all of the sound, shooting the movie over a long period of time, actors' weight changes, looks changes, things like learning how to do your own special effect. To sort of summarize before we end today, is there one takeaway of the sort of best lesson, the best filmmaking lesson that this film gave you?
sound.
Sound. Yeah. It's so important, and to ADR a whole movie, my heart breaks a little bit for you inside, because I know just
It's always sound.
ADRing, you
It's
know.
always sound.
Yeah.
I've sound is, you know, kind of, you know, people say whatever 90% of your film is sound.
Hmm.
Uh, it absolutely is. There's always issues with sound. I think you can never pay too much attention to it.
No.
And I know the next movie I make, I'm going to have issues with sound as well. But you know,
It's
it's
just
kind of,
it's part of it, and especially when you don't have studios and you can't afford to shoot in an LED volume. When you're trying to do indie film, you just, you make the best of what you get on set, and knowing that sound is the one thing you have a lot of control over to fix or
yeah.
redub in later. It just can't be the thing you hold out getting a best shot for. I know even in the region I grew up in, there's an airport. There's three airports that like at a triangulation. So you just every 2 minutes holding for a plane, holding for a plane. If you chose to do that, you'd never get through your shooting day. You have to
No, but
just decide when to
if you
ADR. Yeah.
if you telephone the airports, they'll stop flights for you.
don't you know who I am? I'm an independent filmmaker from some nowhere city in Canada. Stop all flights for me. Yeah.
I'm making a movie here for $7. Give me a break.
Exactly. Yeah. I think when I was that young, my ego might have been there, where I thought, I'm surprised I didn't try to call them. Conor, thank you so much for joining us. I enjoyed this film. I hope everybody else watching Reveal and on the platform is going to check it out. For those of you new to Reveal, if you're finding us on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're finding it, it's an absolutely free platform, revealed.net. Sign in. You sign up like any other streaming platform, but you don't have to put a credit card down. You don't have to pay a monthly fee. You just get to watch a lot of great content, and then watch awesome black and white historical war movies like Conor's here. And I'm a big fan of war movies, but I particularly like the stories that tell little side stories that aren't, we all know about the broad battles and the broad pieces of history and the storming of Normandy, but telling these little sub stories and the really sort of human elements is what I'm a big fan of. So I'm glad this film crossed my desk and I had a chance to check it out and then hear how it was made. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Gavin.